It was the deadliest European conflict since the Second World War. 100,000 people killed, more than 2 million displaced. Nationalism that led to ethnic cleansing, sexual violence and genocide. A brutal conflict that tore Bosnia apart. The Bosnian War ended nearly 3 decades ago, but many of the underlying issues that led to it are now re-emerging.
Dissolution of Bosnia-Herzegovina will happen if the situation in this state continues like this.
So could we really see another war break out here? The story of Bosnia is complex, but it's vital to our understanding of what's happening here today. Bosnia is made up of 3 main ethnic groups: Bosniaks, who are mostly Muslims, Bosnian Serbs, and Bosnian Croats. Now, an important thing to remember is that these groups are separate from Serbs in Serbia or Croats in Croatia, but they do have close ties and a shared history. After the breakup of Yugoslavia in the early 1990s, nationalism started to rise in the now independent nations. This led to issues in each of those states, as well as wars in Croatia and Slovenia. But Bosnia was particularly complicated due to its multi-ethnic makeup. Many of the Bosnian Serbs wanted to be part of Serbia. Many of the Bosnian Croats wanted to be part of Croatia. The Bosnian Serbs were led by this man, Radovan Karadzic. He threatened violence if Bosnia were to become independent. And then, in early 1992, the UN did recognise Bosnia and Herzegovina as an independent nation after a referendum. And fighting duly broke out. It was a difficult, complicated conflict with all sides battling each other, but the bulk of the conflict was between the Serbs and the Bosniaks. It was a particularly horrible war, bitter, brutal and bloody, with mass rapes, massacres and the first use of the term ethnic cleansing. The Bosnian Serbs, backed by the Serbian president Slobodan Milosevic, took over huge parts of Bosnia. They forced tens of thousands of Bosniak Muslims and Croats out of their homes in mass ethnic cleansing. Thousands and thousands died, mostly Bosniaks. The capital of Bosnia, Sarajevo, was bombarded daily in one of the longest military sieges in modern history. And here, in Srebrenica, Bosnian Serb forces under the commander Ratko Mladic killed 8,000 Bosniak men and boys. It was the worst massacre in Europe since the Holocaust. Shahida's husband and brother were both killed. Her teenage son escaped death by fleeing into the woods.
Gdje sam ja grčevito se borila da on krene sa mnom, bila sam najsigurnija da ćemo, kad smo skupa, da će nam biti najbolje. On kad je sa svojim drugovima krenuo preko ulice tamo da kreće iza benzinske pumpe ka šumi, sve dok smo se mi vidjeli, moja ćerka je samo njemu ime dozivala i plačući rukama mu, razumijete. Tako da ja nisam uopšte imala ni priliku da se pozdravim s mojim djetetom koliko su oni samo između njih dvoje.
The war finally came to an end in 1995 with the Dayton Accords. Dividing up Bosnia into 2 autonomous regions, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Serb-controlled Republika Srpska. Dayton implemented a complicated political system in the country to introduce power sharing. It relies on nations such as the US and the European Union to maintain the peace. Bosnia even has a 3-pronged presidency that rotates every 8 months between a Serb, a Croat and a Bosniak. The Dayton Accords did bring a shaky peace to Bosnia, but after 3.5 years of bloodshed, people here were divided and traumatised. Now, some of those old wounds are beginning to open. 30 years later, Bosnia is once again caught in a complex, volatile dispute that embraces ethnic divisions and religious rivalry. And this man, Milorad Dodik, is at the heart of it. He is the Serb member of Bosnia's rotating three-pronged presidency. He's also a former Prime Minister and former President of Republika Srpska. He's an ultra-nationalist. He's threatened to take Republika Srpska out of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He also downplays the genocide at Srebrenica and speaks of his admiration for the Russian President, Vladimir Putin.
The sort of nationalist views that he has are more or less common amongst all Serb political parties, all major Serb political parties. He does not in any way think that compromise is possible. And in a country, a multinational country such as Bosnia and Herzegovina, compromise is the key aspect to moving forward in any sort of policy direction. If this is not a possibility, as Milorad Dodik says, then the only other possibility is for the country to break up, which is clearly on his agenda.
And Dodik is not some curious outlier. In fact, many share his views.
Mislim da nikad mira neće biti na ovim prostorima dok god međunarodna zajednica zastupa I brani I štiti samo jednu stranu, a to je upravo ovu stranu muslimansku.
Mladic, the butcher of Bosnia, is a hero to many. And nationalists like Dodik and Pavlovic want to see Republika Srpska run its own affairs and raise its own army. They also claim Serbs in Bosnia are being marginalised by the Bosniaks.
NATO je zločinačka organizacija jedna. Ja sam to govorio na svim skupovima I svojim javnim istupima da je NATO jedan veliki konkurent Trećem rajhu, to je jedna fašistička organizacija.
Talk like this all seems depressingly familiar, but a new aspect to this equation is the role of Russia.
We have a very, very strong historical relations with the Russians, and we believe in Russians. Personally, I love Russians more than Americans.
Putin is admired by nationalists here. He and Dodik have a strong relationship. Russia is also close to Serbia, an obvious ally to the Bosnian Serbs who are just over the border. And many in the West fear Russia is trying to find new ways to undermine European unity. From a Russian perspective, another European war might distract from Ukraine, stretch NATO and challenge the status quo. And Bosnia, with all its divisions and its volatility, could be the perfect candidate. So could this actually escalate into another war?
It all depends on how much presence the international community is willing to have in the country. Throughout the past 10 years or so, there's been very little investment from the European Union, from the United States, from NATO, from basically any international actor in trying to keep Bosnian politics in line. And we have seen this escalation as a result of this. So what you do have is a country that does not really want war as such, but wants to resolve conflict in other ways. And this ability to resolve conflict in other ways, it's not there. And you're stuck in a way that you want to move forward, but not with the current leaders because they're not willing to do so.
Sarajevo is now not too different from other modern European capitals, far from the war-torn, besieged city of the 1990s. And there does seem to be little desire for another war across both regions of Bosnia. A 2021 survey found that 45% of residents of Republika Srpska are actually against independence from Bosnia. 35% say they support that idea. 72% of the people responding said that avoiding inter-ethnic violence was the most pressing issue in the country. But some who lived through the previous war do fear a return to violence.
Ono što ja vidim, ja se toga bojim. I uvijek kažem, ne do Bog da se pruži prilika ponovo da se desi 92. Ja bar imam osjećaj da na ovim mladima koji su sad izrasli za ovu godinu, da čini mi se da bi radili teže stvari nego što su ovi prethodni.
The Dayton Accords created a peace that has lasted a long time, but Bosnia remains a divided and hurt country, and the trauma that many hoped to leave in the past could soon be brought, kicking and screaming, into the present day.